On this edition of the program, the Epstein Files are free, at least from the House, but it looks like this thing is going to be signed into law. We break down the winners and losers and a very interesting timeline that I can shed a little bit of light into. Also, UK politics. I've just been across the pond and I wanted to talk to somebody about some of the stuff that I found out about what's going on over there. Tom Merritt joins the show and we spend a little bit of time on that. But we also talk a lot about tech and AI and where that is going to manifest itself in terms of the political landscape. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Welcome, everybody, to the Politics program for November 19th, 2025. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, joining you from Austin, Texas. And HR 4405. As I am recording, I am holding up the text of that bill. That is now cleared of the House of Representatives by way of a discharge petition, and it ultimately only fails to secure one thin vote. Nearly unanimous. We got a lot on that. It's very interesting. We are also going to be joined by Tom Merritt. We're going to talk about UK politics. We're going to talk about where AI is manifesting itself on the political line. It's a really good conversation. It's actually a conversation I've been kind of waiting to have with somebody for a while. Obviously, these are two of my big intersections, politics and AI. And few people have watched it in a way that I really, really respect their opinion, like Tom Merritt. We'll also talk about Mohammed bin Salman making his way to the White House. First time that he has been in the White House since the Jamal Khashoggi incident and a judge a judge that says the redrawn Texas maps, the thing that kicked off our redistricting stuff, that, according to one federal judge, not allowed, an illegal racial gerrymander. And a little bit on the Trump tariff dividends. Jam-packed show. I'm very happy to be back in Austin, Texas. Flew back from jolly old England yesterday. I think I've beaten the jet lag, he said, hubristically. But I gotta say, one thing that I was not pleased about is that I wound up missing an extraordinary few days here in American politics when it came to something that, I'll be honest, friends, I have dismissed. That was this. The Epstein File discharge petition that was filed by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. Look, it was a slow roll. I assumed that this would either not come to be or it would get voted on in the House and then it would just die somewhere between the House and the Senate, like many things do. But I now believe, as I speak to you, that if you nearly get a unanimous vote in the House, that this is now going to also pass the Senate, and Donald Trump has said he will sign it into law. Very, very interesting. And here's where we begin. We begin back on Tuesday of last week. House Democrats released a new batch of Epstein-related emails The key headline was an email in which Epstein told an associate that Donald Trump knew about his behavior and had spent time at his house with a girl who was later identified as Virginia Giuffre. The emails did not allege Trump participated in the abuse. But remember, this is the same day that the government reopens. The government reopens. That means that Speaker Mike Johnson has to swear in the newest House member, which means, because she's a Democrat, she signs on to the discharge petition. Now, once she signed on, then all of the signatures were locked. In that moment, there's reporting, specifically from Politico, that Donald Trump was calling around to Lauren Boebert and to Nancy Mace and saying, wouldn't you like to take your names off that discharge petition? Because you needed both of those Republican women if it was going to meet the threshold. So you could have been below the 218 signatures if they had relented. Either did. And so this now was able to face a vote. Thursday, Trump calls several of his closest allies in the House furious that they had signed the discharge petition. And there's been some reporting on this. I'm just going to tell you what I know for a fact. I know that Donald Trump called many key allies. These are ride or die Trump folks, right? They are there for him. And he went as far as rescinding endorsements if anybody voted for the Epstein Files release discharge petition. Now, the way that the White House is talking about this is that the big reason why Donald Trump is mad is because he believes that the Republicans fell for the banana in the tailpipe. That they went along with a Democratic victory and did themselves dirty for it. That it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. If Democrats are happy about it, Republicans should be on the other side. Now, I got my own personal feelings about it, but we'll get to that. I just want to illustrate this timeline. Friday, Donald Trump reverses himself. Instead, he publicly urges that everybody vote yes on the discharge petition, saying, quote, "We have nothing to hide." Sunday, Trump posts again late at night, doubling down that the file should be released. He frames it as long overdue transparency, saying the documents have been sitting there and should come out. He also says that he is urging Pam Bondi to open up new investigations specifically into Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, and Reid Hoffman. And then, of course, Monday and Tuesday, you have the vote, and the vote is now done, and it is overwhelming. That, by the way, includes Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson voted for this. Usually, discharge petitions do not gain the favor of the Speaker of the House because a discharge petition is specifically a mechanism to go around the Speaker of the House. Not in this case. And even then, Johnson was giving a press conference today saying that the discharge petition should be amended. And the Senate looks like they are going to try to do just that, saying that it insufficiently could damage victim privacy, innocent persons, CSAM, future investigations, and declassification. Now, I didn't know exactly what was in the discharge petition because, to be totally honest with you, I did not take it personally. I did not take it seriously as potential law until like 48 hours ago. And essentially, what we have here is that the Attorney General, within, I believe, 30 days after the enactment, will have to turn over all internal DOJ communications, including, I'm going to read verbatim here, emails, memos, meeting notes concerning decisions to charge, not charge, investigate, or decline to investigate Epstein and his associates. All communications, memoranda, directives, log, or metadata concerning the destruction, deletion, alteration, misplacement, or concealment of documents, recordings, or electronic data related to Epstein, his associates, his details in death, or any investigative files. Documentation of Epstein's detention or death, including incident reports, witness interviews, medical examiner files, autopsy report, and written records detailing the circumvention and cause of death. Here's something else. No record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. It does say that you can block it if it is child pornography. And you can block it if it would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. And so many people are saying that this is going to not be released in the same speed because there is now that new investigation into Bill Clinton and Larry Summers. There was also an email released by the House Oversight Committee last week. It did not come from DOJ. It came from the Epstein estate, where Epstein's brother makes a comment that maybe there had been a situation where Donald Trump might have been involved with Bill Clinton, or Bubba, as he is referred to in the email. It's a family show, so I won't go any further. But needless to say, it's a mouthful. There's no way to look at this in a way that is not a massive win for the following people: Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. They were the co-sponsors on this discharge petition. They were out in front on this the entire time. They have both been, at the vanguard. They get a tremendous amount of credit because they backed down the White House. The White House did not want this to happen. It has now happened. They win. The White House loses, which brings me to the White House. Kash Patel, Pam Bondi are on the front lines of this. But Donald Trump is also a huge loser here. Now, he's going to get to rewrite history because he's the president, and ultimately tie goes to the most powerful person because he's going to be able to set the tone going forward. But I don't think that anybody can look at this and say that if Donald Trump wanted files out, files would have been out. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel didn't like, ooh, I'm going to sneak this through. No. This is Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump's call. But again, he is the most powerful person. He can just say something else happened, and we're all going to have to, on some level, understand it as that. Kash Patel made a semi-living when he was a private citizen on podcasts talking about the Epstein Files. He was part of not releasing it. And they have tried to bury it past that. Pam Bondi, while she didn't make it her entire personality when she was out of office, she certainly was somebody that was very bullish and gung-ho about it early in this administration, up to and including re-releasing stuff that had already been out there to influencers. It is one of the most curious own goals that I can ever remember. And Boy, I would love a big, messy story about all this, because there are a lot of questions that I have as to why the hell this happened in the first place, especially since now we're just kind of back where we were before, where the administration's like, absolutely, we need to get these files out there. My headcanon on it is that the reason why the Epstein Files have not been released is because nothing is really as clean as what we want them to be. So obviously there are a million different Epstein thoughts. Did Jeffrey Epstein sleep with underage girls? 100%. I don't think that's a serious question. Did Ghislaine Maxwell help facilitate that? I think that similarly is something that we have already answered. Did other powerful men sleep with underage girls furnished to them by Jeffrey Epstein? That is where we begin with the lingering question. So why don't we release the files? Well, my headcanon is you don't release the files because there is nothing so clean as to suggest that happened. Now, maybe it did. Maybe it's in there. Maybe this is what what many people think it is, which is that you are protecting powerful people because these people are still powerful and they will pull every string they possibly can to not have their names sullied. And there's an argument for that. Larry Summers, when he was named by Donald Trump in that new investigation, announced this week that he was stepping back from public life. Okay. Seems like somebody who's got something to hide. And then there's the farthest ring of this, which is that not only did Jeffrey Epstein furnish underage girls to other powerful people, but he did it because he is either an agent of a domestic intelligence agency who wanted blackmail on any and everybody that they could possibly find, or even more exciting, a foreign one, specifically Israel. Was Jeffrey Epstein an underage Mossad pimp? Now, the other reason why you don't want to release anything is because the stuff that you can release is not going to be enough for people. It doesn't matter what you release from the Epstein Files, there will be an assumption that there is more. With all that being said, part of the reason why I think this has been an extraordinary own goal by the Trump administration is not even necessarily that they didn't release files. It's that for an extraordinarily chatty administration, one that likes talking in front of the cameras, one that likes talking about the issues that they are comfortable with, you all of a sudden had a lot of not talking about it from people that you would have otherwise liked to see talking about it. I mean, let's understand. We went from Pam Bondi saying that the files are on my desk and please, influencers, come to the White House so I can give you guys binders about it that says phase 1 in the presumption that there are phases 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, to a one-page memo saying nothing to see here. So what are they going to release? We'll find out. But everybody who fought for this won. Everybody who fought against this lost. And I now believe it is almost impossible for Donald Trump to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell like with any time left in his presidency. There's been a lot of conversation about him commuting or sentence or something like that. Man, when you have that level of support, all but one person that voted for it, if it is going to sail through the Senate and if you sign it into law, man, I don't know what she could give you that would be worth commuting her sentence. Crazy times. All right. We're going to do the update, and then we'll be back with Tom. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Thank you to everybody who is a supporter of that show. You guys have continued to get the bonus podcast that we've done, and I'm going to give you more bonus content. Our Sunday show, which is normally me breaking down clips from the American Sunday shows, was instead something a little bit different. It's a little bit of a documentary of me being booked on my first ever Sunday morning talk show. I thought it was a fun little change of pace. It also had a little bit of a logistical necessity to it because of travel logistics and time change realities. Doing the normal show that I was going to do was going to be very, very challenging. And so I am aware that we did not give you guys the clips that we normally deliver. And I would like to thank everybody for their patience on that. I hope that everybody would be kind of delighted, and I've gotten good feedback on it. But I'm going to do a subscriber-only Q&A episode. I've solicited questions from you guys on Substack, and so I'll be answering them sometime this week. But I got something extra coming for the subscribers because we've had big news break during subscriber shows that have gone out beyond the paywall. I got to give back to the constituency that brought me here. So thank you to everybody at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Bonus pod coming to you soon. Let's go over some of the stories that we didn't have a chance to get to on the show. President Donald Trump defended Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman during the Crown Prince's high-profile visit to the White House on Tuesday, his first U.S. trip since the Biden administration formally concluded in 2021 that he ordered the 2018 murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Trump dismissed questions about U.S. intelligence finding, calling Mohammed phenomenal, and insisting that the Saudi ruler knew nothing about it. He chastised the reporter who raised the issue, labeling her ABC News fake news and saying that she was embarrassing our guest. Minutes before, Mohammed bin Salman had pledged up to $1 trillion in new Saudi investments in the United States. Saudi Arabia continues to reject the U.S. intelligence. Mohammed bin Salman said Khashoggi's death was painful for Saudi Arabia, calling it a huge mistake and vowing that it doesn't happen again. So this is no surprise for anybody who has followed Donald Trump and the Saudis. And to be totally honest, I mean, look, if you look at the arc of how the Biden administration treated Saudi Arabia, you went from Biden on stage during the debate saying that he would, what is the quote? I think banish to the corner of authoritarianism where Saudi Arabia belongs, to being forced to go to Saudi Arabia because there were oil problems and we didn't want to push them toward China, and then eventually had to come in contact with Mohammed bin Salman, but he didn't want to shake hands, so he fist bumped. The reality is that the United States, especially if you want Saudi Arabia's participation in the Middle East, if you want them to normalize relationship with Israel, if you want for them to be a part of a two-state solution, all of which, these are all in America's interest, there's only, so much you can stomp your feet about the Khashoggi thing. Donald Trump has taken the point of view of, I don't care. That's pretty clear. And what he would rather focus on is how many weapons can we sell you? How much are you investing in the United States of America? And so on and so on and so on. Are you joining the Abraham Accords? Are you going to lean in with your money and manpower to secure a two-state solution? That's where we are. I kind of feel like this is the end of the Khashoggi thing. I did think that Bin Salman's commentary, because in that same question, the same reporter asked about the 9/11 families, and Bin Salman's answer was that Osama bin Laden was desperate to tear apart America and Saudi Arabia. And so the only thing that would fulfill the pain of 9/11 is for that to continue. Look, at the end of the day, however mad you would be at Saudi Arabia for anything, is it worth $10 per gallon gas? Because this is the interlocutor, right? Saudi Arabia has an outstated relationship with OPEC. What Saudi Arabia says pretty much goes. Do you want them to be closer to China? That would be very bad for the United States. International relations is very rarely a sunny, cheery pursuit. And this is one of those moments where people have to hold their nose. This is potentially big news here. A federal judge has blocked Texas's newly redrawn congressional map, a major setback for Trump's nationwide redistricting plan. The 2-1 ruling found that the 2025 map, which created 5 more GOP-leaning districts, was likely an unconstitutional race-based gerrymander crafted with the input of the Trump administration. The court ordered Texas to revert to its 2021 map. Judge Jeffrey Brown, a Trump appointee, wrote that the new map met nearly all of the racial objectives demanded by DOJ, but the decision, all but one, the decision halts Republicans' largest planned redistricting gains. The state is going to appeal immediately. And so that's going to be the big question. Where does this go? I assume it eventually ends up in the Supreme Court. Do they rule on it? For those of you who are wondering, well, if they don't gerrymander, does that mean that California still gerrymanders? Yes. The triggering language that used to be in Prop 50, which passed, was stripped out. So California is going to get their seats anyway, their 5 seats anyway. Will Texas get theirs? Well, that now becomes a legal question. Finally, President Trump floated over the weekend a $2,000 dividend tariff check, which apparently would cost roughly $450 billion, according to an analysis by the Yale Budget Lab. The payments aimed at individuals earning under $100,000 a year would provide only modest short-term boost to the GDP, according to the lab, and employment, while consuming more than an entire year's worth of tariff revenue. Trump has promoted the idea for months, escalating the push as he pressures the Supreme Court to uphold his broader tariff program. The Yale analysis found the checks would rise GDP by about 0.3 percentage points in 2026 and increase unemployment by 0.15 percentage points, although those effects would fade quickly. Inflation would rise by less than 0.1, countering fears of a Biden-era stimmy-style spike. The U.S. collected $195 billion in tariff revenue in fiscal year 2025 and is on track for $420 in 2026. Trump says the checks could start going out by mid-2026, just ahead of the midterm elections. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Congress must approve the program. So this would not be by executive fiat. Interesting. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, where you need to go if you want to support this show. Thank you to everybody who has had their membership renewed over the past few weeks. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate your support. And by the way, tell a friend I don't know how long we've been a top 100 political Substack, but we are a top 100 political Substack. The little engine that could. Even now, while all these other people are coming from mainstream media, they all want a Substack now. They lose their job in mainstream media, and now they want to come play on our block. Well, guess what? We're still in the top 100. You want to know why? Because authenticity matters. You want to know why? Because you guys matter. You know when it's real. You know when it's just somebody who's hoping and praying that one day they get another job on a television network. I'm here for you, friends. We're on the same journey together, and I could not be more proud to do it. Thank you. It all happens because you believe. I'm a little Tinkerbell after all. If you guys stop believing, I'll just fade off into non-existence. Take politics seriously.com. And now, Mr. Tom Merritt. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome back to the program Tom Merritt, of course, host of Daily Tech News Show, so many other fine programs. How you doing, Tom?
Good, Justin. I find it odd to be here when I have often your UK correspondent. Usually you send the correspondent to the country. In this case, it was the other way around.
Now I'm going to bring back information.
This is great. I love it.
To you. And I'm here to tell you, these crazy cats are going to do it again in the UK. They're going to pitch their prime minister again.
Yeah. He lasted a little longer than your Liz Trusses of the world, and heads of lettuce. But yeah, it looks like you have got the same thing going on there that you have in other countries, whereas you basically have four movements, right? You've got two on the right and two on the left, and so any party that is trying to corral those cats is at their peril.
It was kind of surprising, and not surprising that I wasn't super up on UK politics, but having been there for the last week, and getting more of a full blast, talking to people that actually know things out there. I don't think people understand how in peril the establishment is in the UK, and they both kind of know it, but in classic UK fashion, they're just kind of sitting there. Nobody's really doing anything except when it comes to their jobs. And that's where, so Keir Starmer, the prime minister of the United Kingdom, Labour government, Labour came back into power after the Conservative Party was not able to hold on. Now, they had been in power for a little bit longer than people expected. They had replaced their prime minister several times past Brexit. And now Keir Starmer's back, or Keir Starmer is in power. Labour is back, rather. And it appears that he's lost the faith of his own party. He's got people in semi-open rebellion, right? It's British for open rebellion, which means there are people talking to the press about how bad Keir Starmer sucks and how awesome it's going to be when the new guy comes in. But in the background, you have this growing fear that the Reform Party, headed by Nigel Farage and pretty much centered around the idea of economic issues framed around migration, is just going to sweep into power no matter who does anything over the next several years before they have to call an election. And that's that for British politics. That's something that is once a century you turn over that level of power.
Yeah, it's interesting because this kind of thing is more possible in a parliamentary system, unlike in the United States where we have higher hurdles for a new party to get in, as we've seen over the past few years. A parliamentary system can allow a party to just kind of come out of nowhere. We saw that with Emmanuel Macron in France. However, usually the public pressures are such that people are loyal enough to their party that it is just naturally difficult for a new party to create. But as we saw in France, if you get enough people dissatisfied with the existing parties, you can make a groundswell. And that does seem to be what Nigel Farage is able to take advantage of, or at least will be able to take advantage of here, because these parties are not satisfying what the people want. You see the Home Secretary of the Labor Party cracking down on refugees and asylum seekers, and probably counting on conservative votes to get the changes passed. That's a sign that things are not normal.
And the big thing that I was hearing, and this is, largely through people that are more sympathetic to labor, is that this isn't just the Conservative Party or the Tories, as you might hear them if you casually follow British politics, losing their support to reform. This is labor too. And if you look at the second choice votes for labor voters, it's very often reform. And that to me is something that is particularly fascinating, because beyond the fate of any of these parties, and who knows exactly, by the time that everything's said and done, there are questions of exactly how many MPs that reform would be able to even put forward that would have, there are little dirt under the fingernails, British political things that, like, who knows whether or not there is Farage just takes over the Conservatives or something like that. But still, the sea changes in what the people want. And that seems to have taken almost everybody by surprise, despite the fact that it has been like a slow moving train wreck for the last, 10 years, it seems.
Yeah. It reminds me a little of the innovator's dilemma. Where, an established company has a harder time adapting to new technologies because it has to protect its existing business, right? And the new technology often threatens them. It feels like that's what's going on here. Is labor's like, well, we've got this radical base, so we can't be too anti-refugee because it'll throw them off. And the conservatives have similar dilemmas that they have to deal with. Well, we can't be too much about this because we have traditionalists that will throw off. Whereas Nigel Farage has got, like, me, I got nothing behind me. I've got everything in front of me, so I can just say whatever it is that people want to hear.
And, we're going to see this because who knows how many prime ministers we're going to get between now and the next election for labor. But you saw the conservatives click through every name that everybody knew that was, gunning for big leadership in that party when they were last in power. Now you're going to see Keir Starmer, whoever's going to replace Keir Starmer past this, which there's a few names that are flying around, but you never really know when the knives really get pulled out. Who knows exactly will wind up settling there. But not only have you seen both major parties, there are the top two leading parties, but also you're going to see a lot of names and faces. And if people are still not getting what they want, then, it's going to be really interesting.
Well, Keir Starmer, of course, had to come out and say that every minute not spent talking about and dealing with the cost of living is a minute wasted. He intends to be leading this party into the next election, which you don't need to say if you're not worried that you're not going to be leading the party into the next election. I'm curious what names you were hearing whirling about.
If I could look, I would like to say that for anybody who pegs me as just some big, loud American exceptionalist that likes to go and talk about how every other country's election is really boring compared to ours and it's not worth my attention, I've done a great job of being a UK political analyst. I do not remember the name of the guy for whom, as I was in the green room of GB News, they were reporting that he was quietly offering cabinet positions to people that would be
like creating a shadow government for his own party.
No. Just in the way that you would as you are like, hey, can I count on your support to throw Keir Starmer into the bin, as they say out there, if I take over, you are now going to be blah, 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 right? Like that he is just, offering political favors. That being said, the contractions that are undeniable are that there had apparently been a big a rollout of labor, which was long expected, despite the fact they ran on the idea that they weren't going to raise taxes. They then were rolling out the idea that they had to raise taxes, and then almost on a dime, kind of in the way that you would do if you were afraid that you were going to get taken out of leadership. They said, no. Now we're hardcore affordability. Of course we can't raise taxes. And then there have been a few people behind the scenes that have just been talking about how bad Keir Starmer sucks and how awesome it would be if he left. So that was the stuff that was top of mind in British politics when I was out there.
Yeah. If I said the name, do you think you'd remember it?
Yes. It had. I
want it to be Ed Miliband because that would be hilarious, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. The Independent threw out West Streeting.
Okay. No, that sounded. Yeah. When I said ours, I meant West Streeting. Yeah.
The health secretary is apparently, and he has got a grin like a Doctor Who villain. Look at that. Amazing.
So yeah, apparently what I had heard was that the person that was in charge, that was possibly leading the decapitation squad for Keir Starmer, also was the person that was charged by the party to be out in front of the press all the time. So that has been another wrinkle of this, that the possible replacement is also making googly eyes at the media and the public, ostensibly in charge of Keir Starmer's public perception.
Yeah. All right. And again, it sounds like it's just a whirl of names and nobody knows. And Keir Starmer is the one who would like you to shut up about it because he doesn't want to be replaced.
Because he doesn't want to be replaced. The one thing that is still true out there and that they care as much as we care over here is the Epstein stuff, though. We will have talked about that earlier.
That's interesting to me. I guess it makes sense because of former Prince, Andrew
the
Windsor.
artist formerly known as Prince.
The artist formerly known as a Prince.
Yeah.
So there's a local angle to that story, and they're curious if it might take down anybody else.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, as we speak today, Larry Summers, who had long been connected to Jeffrey Epstein, says that he's going to be taking a step back into a private life today. So there is obviously going to be massive fallout, I guess, if more stuff is revealed, which gives, I'm on your program, Daily Tech News Show, I guess today as people are listening to this. And we talked about Ro Khanna very much in the center of pushing this forward. And he really comes out smelling like a rose if there is consequences. And I guess that's where this all kind of comes back, is that whether we're talking about the UK or the US or Epstein or affordability, the one through line to all of it is they are living in a protected world where they're able to get away from things. And that's fine if we are doing good, but we do not feel like we are doing good. We feel like our paycheck is being squeezed more and more. And so whether it is policy or embarrassment or societal defenestration, populism is on the rise. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing to me, is that, populism is here. And it doesn't really, it's not owned by one party or another. How you approach it is different, but that seems to me to be the common denominator in almost all of the most popular, highly charged issues on either side of the pond.
Yeah, and the back of the envelope way of looking at it is populism always rises when the economy is shaky, and it gets more popular the more severe the shakeup of the economy is. And I don't think anybody actually knows where the economy is headed right now, because we're still in the reverberations of having unplugged the entire world's economy and seeing how it all shakes out. Again. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a bunch of conversations I had at this conference where people were like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about migration, or let's talk about all these issues. And almost each and every one of them, I'm like, and I really should find out the exact number here, but it's like, we had 15% net, maybe more than that, net inflation on almost all goods over like a 3-year period. And that tends to leave people really crabby. And not to say that all these issues can't be tackled separately, but I do think that if you're just looking at people being mad about stuff, it's like, I said this during the 24 election, the most humiliating thing that I could think of happening to somebody is getting to a checkout at a grocery store and having to put things back. Like that is like, it's like every element of humiliation. It's local. It's someone that you see on a regular basis. You're around, you could be viewed by people that you are dependent on like your social status and hierarchy for. And it feels terrible. It feels awful. Like, it's like running a credit card and having it be declined. There's just something just visceral about it. And that's something that's happened. There's a reason why people continue to talk about it. And that's where, for the Trump administration, they do need to get their head on straight, because if you can say prices have dropped, and in many cases that's true, and you can say it wasn't us that had the bulk of the inflation that was on top of it, and that is undoubtedly true, but it's not where it was. And none of the pain that was there before magically goes away when there's a new party in power. That matters to you. It doesn't matter to anybody else.
Inflation took down Ford and then took down Carter. It took a while for it to fade enough from memory that Ronald Reagan could get reelected in a landslide as he did in '84. And I think people forget just how long the effects persisted. I don't know if those effects will still be around in 28, but those effects are definitely going to still be around next year.
Well, and, whether it's, migration in the UK, it's immigration here, everything is exacerbated by it.
Yeah.
Everything, and now you see a lot of stuff on the right about like H-1B visas and stuff like that, and that's part of it, is that some of the economic uncertainty, and this is what we talked about a little bit on DTNS, is not around blue collar right now. It's around white collar. It's around, oh, wait, hold on. I went to college and I got a crazy degree and I still owe 6 figures in student debt. And now my earning potential is going down, and I might not be able to get a job. Like that certain rungs of jobs are kind of going away or are going to change. And while I'm a huge optimist for AI, and I would make the argument that no, this is still a very good time to want to be in white collar business. In fact, it only takes you playing around with ChatGPT for like 3 hours a day for you to probably make more than you would 5 years ago. That fear is real. Yeah. That anxiety is real. And now it has broken containment. It's not just, the robots are going to replace me at a factory job. Now it's ChatGPT is going to replace me for my first 5 years, theoretically, in the workforce.
Yeah. And we talk about this all the time on DTNS, but you are going to have more jobs come out of this in the end. That's not very controversial. The question is always, how long does that take and how disruptive is it? When computers came around, they slowly replaced jobs, and those people went to new jobs. I mean, think about how many job titles exist now that did not even, people would have not understood what you meant by a project manager in the 1950s, right? You had rooms full of people at typewriters at that point, and you don't
Tom,
need that
I know
anymore.
that both your parents and mine looked down on us when we were infants and said, you will grow up to be independent podcasters.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. As I crawled toward the microphone, as a baby, and they're like, obviously,
not mainstream media. No. There will also be a gigantic a breakdown of the gatekeepers.
They clearly do. That wasn't
peer to peer to make your money.
Yeah. So the question is how long is it going to take and how disruptive is it going to be? And am I going to be one of the people left to the side who can't easily get to one of those new jobs? And those are all very anxiety-inducing questions, even if you're level-headed and reasonable about it. If you're not thinking about it that much, you just hear what Ro Khanna says about people losing jobs, and you're like, yeah, we need to do something about that. We need to protect those jobs from being lost. We need to protect artists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of uncertainty because there's a lot of uncertainty, if that makes sense.
Is it, this is like a kind of big question, but it's one that I've kind of wrestled with. Beyond the micro, just looking at the macro, is it kind of interesting that we are seeing sort of there's a better phrase for it, but I'm going to say Luddite, even though that's a kind of a pejorative, but there is this kind of anti-tech movement in a world where, for the 90s and the 2000s, from almost some of the same voices that were like, no, like everything tech innovation, everything internet innovation, let's go. This is amazing. What a brave, beautiful new future that we are building. And now so many of those voices are anti this technology, which I don't know whether or not that's like getting old or whether or not that's just a cyclical element of society that at a certain point, new technology becomes bad as opposed to good. There was a novelty before, now it doesn't exist. But I don't know anybody who's followed tech in the same granular way that you have. If you're to take a big step back, how do you understand it?
I try to understand it all the time, and my understanding of it keeps changing because it's a difficult one to wrap your head around. But I have thought about it a lot. Like you say, I feel like there's two elements, and the biggest one is in the 90s, tech companies were scrappy underdogs, and they were empowering you to be able to get out from under the foot of the big companies. And the big companies were telcos and media companies and banks, and financial companies. And tech companies were there to help you subvert all that. That's the way it was perceived. Over time, those tech companies became the big companies. It is really notable. And I think people forget that the tech companies weren't always the biggest 5 companies. In fact, it's only been in the last 10, 15 years that you can look at the biggest companies by market cap, and they're all technology companies. And so I think that is the biggest driver is people say, well, this isn't a scrappy underdog trying to help me. This is a huge behemoth trying to rake in as many profits as it can at my expense. And I think the other one that kind of goes along with that is we went from a culture of everything should be free to we need to protect the rights of things. It started as everything should be free, and those big companies want to protect their rights. And as more creators and independent creators entered, it became those big companies are trying to take my content, trying to take my things and use them for themselves. And that monetization of the free economy went from, hey, everything on the internet is free, that's great, to, hey, everybody's trying to manipulate me.
It does kind of make you feel crazy though sometimes, right? Like when you're like, oh no, the people that were screaming about anti-DRM are like, no, don't trade on this. Like, the folks, I mean, you do a show called Cord Killers with our friend Brian. And now we are very much in this world where like, it's like, oh, I don't know, man. Cable seemed to be like at least a model where everybody was getting paid, and every once in a while there were these disputes, but they didn't last as long, and they didn't ask me to buy 3 cable subscriptions. Like this is very we're in this odd moment where, as people who were very much, I think, on the front lines of a lot of these culture wars back then, internet-based culture wars, finally the good guys were going to win, the bad guys were going to be vanquished. Now you have this nostalgic look back and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe poor old Comcast got a raw deal.
I think the entertainment technology landscape is a good example that you can pull some broader lessons out of, which is it annoys me to no end when someone's like, we were better off under cable. I'm paying more and I have less choice. I'm like, that is clearly not true.
Yes.
You definitely have more choice, and you are able to pay as much as you want. You don't have to subscribe to everything. Before, it was all or nothing. You paid the $100. I mean, they would advertise it as $30 a month, but then, if you didn't call to complain about your contract, it went up.
Yeah.
You can go look up the average amount people pay for cable, and it is quite expensive. You can decide which stuff you want to subscribe to. It is confusing. It requires work, and nobody wants to do that to just watch TV. And that's what they miss. It's not that they miss cable. They miss the simplicity of a lack of choice, basically, of like, well, I didn't have any choice, but at least I knew where I got my television. There was one place and one bill. And when I say there's larger lessons to draw out of this, we are in that transition period to the new model right now. People, I actually remember my grandma talking about how she felt this way about television, which is like, why couldn't we have just kept radio? I knew which stations to listen to and which shows were on. And then suddenly all the radio shows were showing up on television. Then they went away on radio. And it's like, do I have to buy a television? It was a simpler problem, but it had similarities where right now we're going through this phase of, okay, we smashed cable and it's in a million pieces, and it's going to take a while to reassemble pieces. And I believe, because I'm an optimist, that eventually we will have more flexibility and the ability to control our own costs and get the things we want in an easy way. It's just going to take a while for those new models to develop.
It's a lot easier to reconcile if you just think about it as separation anxiety, because you're right. It's like, no, it's way better to be very cheap and not spend any money in an ecosystem. You have so many more choices between YouTube and the fast networks than you ever had before. Like it is the best time to spend $0 and just be a monetizable entity than it was when we were growing up and you had 3 channels, maybe a 4 or 5, depending on whether or not you spoke a second language, and you had, one of the auxiliary things in a CW UPN kind of world, or a WB UPN kind of world. But other than that, that was pretty much it. And sometimes they just stopped playing things late into the night, where now you can watch thousands. You have millions of choices to watch things on just those. As long as you have an internet connection or you have a phone bill, you can enjoy almost any and all of that. But yet the complaint is, well, but then I don't get what I want. And what I want is spread across 7 different things that I need to subscribe to.
And I noticed this, the older you are, the bigger a problem it is, because you are used to getting everything. Right? Or at least everything you could get, right? If you couldn't get it, there was nothing you could do about it. And now you can get everything. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, I have to get everything. And younger folks are like, or you don't get anything. Just watch YouTube.
What's your take on the AI culture war flashpoint? Like we talked on DTNS. I encourage everybody to go listen to my conversation with Tom there. But this was a scenario where Call of Duty has art that I guess was easily identifiable as AI that turns into a controversy in the gaming forums, which I will say in general for folks who are not a part of that, the threshold is very low for something to become a controversy in the gaming world. But, AI slop is something that is very controversial in that world. It certainly became controversial to the point where people had to apologize for it. But, and I don't need a commentary on that issue, but rather the underlying thing of anti-AI generated content. Is that something that sticks around, or does it just fade as the AI generated content gets good enough that people are just not able to tell?
I think it's the latter. I think as more people grow up with it being a normal thing, as it gets better, as it is used more responsibly and used better, and the shysters who are using it to manipulate a gap in understanding find it less profitable to do so, it just starts to be accepted, because 2 things happen. We get used to it, and people get better at understanding what it's good at. Right now, nobody knows what it's best at. So everybody's trying stuff. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. It reminds me, I love having historical comparatives. It reminds me of synthesizers. In the 70s, if you used a synthesizer in your music, you were a jerk. You hated music. You were trying to ruin music. Go learn to play a real instrument. Don't give me your stupid synthesizer music. Today, that's laughable. And if you would have asked me if that would ever go away in the 80s, 90s, I would have said no. There's always going to be people who hate synthesizers, but synthesizers got better. We learned what they're good at and what their sounds are. Musicians got better of knowing like, oh, this is when that kind of music is good, and this is what those are good for. And nobody complains about synthesizer music anymore. You don't hear a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, I hate that band. They use synthesizers." It's just musicians use it or don't use it depending on a musical choice, not some kind of prejudice against the device itself. And I think we'll get there with AI at some day. It may take 20 or 30 years, but
you have just reframed all of this under the banner of Dylan went electric.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is something that I, born in the 80s, I have no connection to the idea of folk music being this one specific thing. And then all of a sudden the idea of an electric guitar being very controversial. Like, it's only through an understanding of music history through podcasts now that I really even, country music gets a lot of this of what is and isn't country. And a lot of that is based on specific use of instruments, like that you should only use these kinds of things. And like bluegrass music is defined because it doesn't use these instruments. It does use these kind of instruments, and you can only kind of play them in a certain way, or else you begin to go outside the genre. And that's why for folks who are unaware, young people, although I guess that Timothée Chalamet movie is this story, but like Dylan starts playing an electric guitar and all of the folk people are like, you are a betrayal. You are a Judas. You are the worst person in the world. It has political implications. It has societal implications. It has artistic implications. And I guess that might be it. Whereas synthesizers and electric instruments were looked at as this kind of cheat that like, oh, you're making things that shouldn't be possible. That is where it is with AI, down to the concept of, oh, you can mass market this. This is now available in a way that cheapens what I used to expect. And like, I've kind of always thought of it in the way of like, all right, well, people really hate slop when they feel like they're not getting what they paid for. When they feel like they are being, something is like less than what it would be otherwise. And like
that was putting in low effort, right? The idea that like that synthesizer group isn't trying to learn to play an instrument. They're letting the machine do it for them.
Yes. And like I've had that with like my Substack, where I know I don't have time to write a column that would go along with every episode of PX3. But I do put a lot of time and effort into developing my monologue for the show. So I would like to find a happy medium of synthesizing the words that I have worked on, the words that I delivered, and having that in there. Now, I don't know, and this is honestly, I'd like for people to email me. I don't know what would be perceived as more low effort. And I think that this is a moving target. If I just ran a transcript where I'm literally just punting on the idea of making this readable, I'm just saying, here's exactly what I said. Read this unnatural thing that doesn't really fit the written word, but it very much
sounded
fits
fine spoken, but not good written. Yeah.
Or do I take my words that I said and I researched and I run it through an LLM and I say, make this, my points, my research, what I said, into a column. So it is read more like a column. And sometimes I read the posts and I'm like, that's great. That's nearly exactly what I would do. Sometimes I read it and I'm like, I really hope that this writing stuff gets a little better. But I don't know. I don't know what people think is more low effort between the two of them. I know that I don't have time to write another original thing. But I don't know.
Yeah. And it will get better. Tools will get better at aiding you. And we'll start to move the line between what's acceptable. Right now, having a tool fix your grammar, I think, is uncontroversial. Whenever I talk to people about it, they're like, oh, well, Grammarly's fine. That's just helping fix your mistakes. And like that line's going to continue to move, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like we had, the Sunday show that we had on me making my Sunday talk show debut in London, I was like, all right, I'm going to get all this video of me going from my hotel down to Westminster to go to the GB News studio. But like, if it's a montage, needs music,
right?
I'm not going to commission between now and when I post this a song, but I can make a funny Brit pop song about me going to do a thing. And it's like, I think in that case, it fits into this idea where nobody would find it. I haven't gotten a comment saying ruined by the AI song.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But yeah. And I heard it and immediately knew what you had done. And I'm like, oh, that's music. That's fun. You're not trying to fool me into thinking anything. You're like, hey, I made this funny thing. Is it funny? Yeah, it is.
I literally made it in the cab while I was shooting the B-roll, so great. In the world of this all being a one-man band, this is just another harmonica that I have strapped to my chin.
And how dare that harmonica be electric?
I don't know where it goes though. That's the biggest thing is, employment displacement, I feel like might be more of a red herring than we think. Because the one element that we have not seen with AI is the birth of the products. Like everybody thinks of AI now in these very abstract concepts, these very like existential ideas that at some point in one of the basements of OpenAI or Anthropic or Google will eventually create a genie that destroys the world or something like that.
Right.
What I think the reality of it is going to be is that there's going to be a lot of APIs that are incredibly capable that people are going to build products on. And those products are going to be the definition of our economy for the next 15 years. But those products are going to need to hire people. And those jobs will exist for them to grow. But I don't know. We'll see.
I'll be honest. The thing that we tend to slip in, myself included, into making the mistake about is thinking that this is it. LLMs are the thing. And how are they going to change everything? And I hear people being over optimistic about what they can do. And I hear people being pessimistic about what they can do. And the fact is, LLMs are pretty good at some things. They're horrible at other things. We'll get better at figuring out what those are. And there will be other models. LLM is not the only thing you can do on neural networks. It's not the only thing you can do with tensor processing. And I was recently reminded of that when DeepMind issued a new weather model that said, before we were using image and vision processing, and that required a lot more processing. This one only needs to be processed once because we tailored it to weather. We're going to get more of that kind of thing where we're using the models differently and not everything has to be based on an LLM. And that's where it's going to be surprising. Like, oh, wait, here's a new model that somebody unexpected made, and it can do this really well. And we're going to have the whole process again because suddenly what we thought was the landscape shaping up is going to be shifted by somebody else's new technology. It happens all the time. You just don't know when it's going to happen.
And with that will come the political ramifications downstream. And that is kind of what we don't know. We know that a lot of people have their ears perked up that want to start staking out claims on where things might be a political hot button issue, but we don't know what the actual issues are going.
As long as you can call it all AI and be against AI, politically you'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, until you create a policy. In that case, you have to either define it and then you start getting in a fight with the actual AI companies. Tom Merritt, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Justin. Pleasure to be here, and please invite me back soon. I love chatting with y'all.
Do we have anything else other than DTNS we want to get out there?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Now that you mention it, I finally got a book published. Had to self-publish it because the publisher went under. So apologies to anybody who got caught in that. But Synced is available now at tomsnewbook.com, or you can get it at a little bit of a discount if you buy it. Thank you. You can buy it directly at dailytechnewsshow.com/store as well. The book is entirely about technology. If you want to get up to speed on technology today, get this book and then just flip to the topics that you feel like you want to know about. I've got a chapter for pretty much everything you can think of, including AI stuff. Go check it out. That is tomsnewbook.com.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
And that'll wrap us up today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio. Will Saddleberg is our producer and our editor. If you want to email me, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find, follow, and share video clips of the show. Justin R. Young on TikTok, Justin R. Young on Instagram, Justin R. Young on Twitter, and on YouTube. Politics is what you search for. If you want to hit me off with a one-time donation, it is paypal.me/payjury, PAYJURY. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you'd like to send me anything you'd like in the mail, it is Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Again, that is Post Office Box 153184. Austin, Texas, 78715. You can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. Our founding tier gets your name right at the end of the show, like these fine folks in our foundational tier. These guys really make it happen. Sonny Black, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Nick, Sarah, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, Neil, Casey, oh yeah, it's Adam, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Michael, Matt, DP4 Bongo, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Paul, Gloria, my mom. She's going to be back on the show. I got to head to Florida next week. A dog named Chuckers. Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. If you want your name read on the show, only one place to do it. Take politics seriously.com. Somebody will be on Friday. I don't know who. But they'll be on. We'll have bonus content for you, the subscriber. Till then, is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Hold 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.